Well, good day to everyone joining us, and welcome to today's X-Talks webinar. Today's talk is entitled Trends Report 2022, Findings, Challenges, and Plans for a Quality Management System for Life Sciences. My name is Ryan, and I'll be your X-Talks host for today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and this presentation includes a Q&A session with our speakers. Now, the webinar is designed to be interactive, and webinars work best when you're involved. So please feel free to submit your questions and comments for our speakers throughout the presentation using the questions chat box, and we'll try to attend to your questions during the Q&A session. This chat box is located in the control panel, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you require any assistance along the way, please contact me at any time by sending a message using this same chat panel. At this time, know that all participants are in listen-only mode, and please note that the event will be recorded and made available for streaming on xtalks.com. At this point, I'd like to thank Qualio, who developed the content for this presentation. Founded in 2012, Qualio is the first cloud quality management software for all life sciences companies. Medical device and pharmaceutical companies need a secure and scalable quality management system with the flexibility to support their evolving needs. Qualio meets that challenge by cutting through the complexity to optimize and automate critical quality processes. The remote-first Qualio team is distributed across North America and Europe. Now, I would like to introduce our speakers for today's event. Meg Sinclair has 10+ years as a quality assurance, regulatory affairs, and compliance professional with a range of cross-functional skills and experience that spans nonprofits to startups. Meg helps companies adapt to and master new and complex subject material with organization and attention to detail. And Kelly Stanton brings over 20 years of experience in both the pharmaceutical and medical device industries to the world of small startups and scalable quality system implementations. Having been an implementer, administrator, and end user of many different QMS tools on the market, she has built several quality systems and is an advisor to over 30 medical device and pharma companies. Jean Marie Donovan has 20 years of professional experience in CMC and quality assurance. Currently, she is owner of Jean Marie Donovan Consulting LLC, a company that specializes in supporting the development of pre- and post-marketed compounds by consulting on projects in quality assurance and regulatory strategy. And Greg Norton is a quality manager at Kpis Scientific, a bioprocess manufacturer located in Durham, North Carolina, specializing in the production of sterile products for tissue banking, pharmaceutical, and biotech industries. Greg has 20 years experience in various quality management roles, overseeing all facets of the medical device supply chain. But without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and hand things over to our first speaker today, Kelly Stanton. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Excited to talk to you a little bit today about our trends report. We recently conducted a sizable survey of industry, and our speakers and such will be joining us today as we kind of talk through some of the highlights. And the actual summary of the report is available to you as a handout in the system, so feel free to grab that, and we'll look forward to any questions you may have as we run through. So our learning objectives for this conversation today, we're going to dive into those key findings from that quality trends report. We're going to review key challenges faced by quality professionals in 2022 and have about how we go about fixing those. Hope to gain some clarity on the myths and realities surrounding a life science QMS, and build some actionable strategies based on real quality professional feedback for growing and strengthening your business in 2022. We have a lot of years experience on the call with us today, and we're excited to have this conversation and encourage, again, please ask questions. We encourage participation, and we'll try to get to all of them, and if we can't, we'll be sure to follow up with you after the presentation. So Meg, I guess hand it off to you. You ready to talk a little bit about what we learned?
Sure, Kelly. So let's start by looking at the priorities and plans of of our respondents and what they aim to achieve in 2022. 27% had already achieved all the standards they required and had no accreditation objectives for 2022. FDA, GXP, and medical device quality requirements loomed large for those who did have plans for 2022, while broader quality standards like environmental, health and safety, and information security like ISO 27001 only had low levels of interest. This tight focus on a handful of key standards is perhaps unsurprising with the burden and effort of ISO accreditation journeys in mind. Life science companies are taking a measured and appropriate approach to compliance and focusing effort on only those standards which directly impact the path to market. Nevertheless, only 5% of respondents currently accredited to ISO 27001 and another 8.8% are planning to be in the next year. The dominance of uncontrolled paper and the spreadsheet-led quality systems, which will come too soon, does look like a potential long-term risk for the integrity and security of the data flowing through these organizations. And then an additional 31% of respondents plan to implement an eQMS in this year for reasons which we'll discuss later. Standardization, hiring, and process strengthening were also identified as key priorities, with 10% of respondents identifying a new standard as their primary objective for this year. Any of those things standing out to you, Greg or Jean-Marie?
Well, I think that the biggest thing that really stands out is people who are implementing new equality management systems. You know, I think that that's been a real, you know, sea change previously from previous, because maybe even due to the pandemic and these virtual companies and everyone working virtually, I think the huge challenge has been to get approvals, to manage, you know, the workflow now from quality. I mean, just the workflows itself is such a huge challenge if you're working with a paper-based system. What do you think about it, Greg?
I would agree that, you know, trying to get, especially now, because a lot of companies, A, they have more than one facility, or B, they're international, or C, because of the pandemic, a lot of people were working from home and it is difficult to get things through. One of the things I've noticed between my past company and the one that I'm in now, one of our biggest challenges as far as doing that is growth. So once the company starts to get bigger, it's easy to do it when you're small and you've only got a few procedures and there's only like 10 or 12 people working there. But as things start to get added on, it becomes way more challenging to be able to try to control all of those different facets of it, whether it's deviations or Kpis or just documents in general. As you increase that more and more and more, it's so much harder to be able to get them through there. Plus, a lot of it for us in general came down to just being Part 11 compliant and making it so much easier to be able to just print something out of a system and not have to worry about, well, how did you know, get these approved and who were the reviewers? And, you know, it was just a lot easier when the system does all the work. It just makes it so much better.
Right, and I think we can link some of these findings here with going paperless and implementing other tools with getting a new equality management system along with standardization, right? So how these kind of pop out. You know, all of those kind of link to getting a new equality management system because, you know, it's really about moving toward everything being paperless and seamlessly being integrated. Although I must say, you know, it does take, like you said, Greg, a bit of work to get to that point, right?
Correct. And another thing I've noticed, especially here, because we literally just started implementing our Qualio system over the last 3 or 4 months, is auditing. So when you're being audited, it's a lot easier to just go into the system, look for what you want, and just be able to print it rather than rooting through what we were previously when you have like, you know, 3 dozen binders and there's spreadsheets scattered all over the place. And now with the ability to be able to link certain things together, like documents and forms to, you know, spreadsheets or whatever, if it's all intertwined inside the system, you can access everything all at once rather than having to go searching for things, which saves a lot of time. And it's a lot easier to explain the workflow when it's all gone through a single system rather than, 16 different folders on your, on your network.
Right.
Not to
Glad you
belabor the
highlighted
point
that.
too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, about electronic quality systems, because of course, we're biased in that regard, but I do think people really underestimate the time and the infrastructure necessary to manage paper. And while it sounds easy, and it's right there and it's tangible and you can touch it, the making the supporting processes that you have to build around just managing the paper do not scale. They don't scale well. They're very expensive. They're very people heavy. It takes lots of, whole entire document control departments just to issue, controlled copies and then keep track of those copies and all of that kind of stuff. Sounds easy and simple when you're just getting started, but it does not scale and it will slow you down later for sure. So.
And open you up to a whole lot of audit findings.
It's amazing how, and then the answer to that is another form or another signature or another, and it's like, no, just stop. Now you're making it more complicated. For sure.
You have to make your paper system even more complicated than it has to be just to be able to control the simplicity of it.
Yeah. Yep.
Definitely big fans of keeping it simple where you can here at Qualia. So great insights for plans for this year. And then we'll go on to our next slide. So we won't spend too much time on this, but professional learning and development is as crucial for quality professionals as any other industry. So we wanted to quickly share how folks in our industry can support their work and with these memberships and industry news resources. If you aren't a member of one of these bodies already, it might be worth considering a membership as a way to enhance your knowledge and career credentials. And it's also a great way to keep your finger on the pulse of the latest quality and compliance developments and regulatory changes. And another kind of timely topic for 2022, job satisfaction. With quality professionals, it ranks high for upward mobility and tenure time compared to other industries. About half of respondents felt their pay as a quality or life science quality professional was about right and somewhat satisfying, well above the US national average of 39%. A third were very or extremely satisfied with their compensation, and 30% were promoted in the past year, a relatively high figure which might reflect an increase of responsibilities triggered by this pandemic. And although no industry has been immune to the Great Resignation of 2021, with 18% being in the roles less than 1 year and 27% in the roles for just 1 to 2 years, it appears fairly steady. Almost a third have been in the role for 3 to 5 years, reflecting the median American employee tenure of time of 4 years, while a quarter have been in the role for 6 years or more. Thoughts on job satisfaction in this industry, Jean-Marie, Greg, and Kelly?
Yeah, I do think that it's a really, really challenging role because of where you're stuck between you're often operational as well as putting systems in place. And so, that I think it's good to see that people are satisfied with their pay. I found that kind of a surprising but happy result. But I think that the Great Resignation might be a bit delayed in this. We might see this a little bit more. But the other thing I have seen a lot of, at least in San Francisco Bay Area where I am, is a lot of openings, right? And so because there's so many openings, I think that we'll probably see a little bit more of the Great Resignation in this role as other roles open, and it's going to be easier to kind of hop to another opportunities.
I think more of what I've been seeing here, at least in the area that I work in, we're in what they call the research triangle. So we have a lot of basically research and development is huge in this area. So And what I've seen from even people that we're trying to hire, nobody's really, even before all of this started, people seem to hop. They stick it out for a couple of years, gets a couple of years under their belt, and then they just move. I'm not really sure if it's just that they figure they can make a couple, they'll make more money, as soon as they move from one place to the other. And that's basically how it goes. Or they get into, it's kind of tougher in smaller companies because there's not as much, like not everybody that works there is going to be a VP someday. So eventually, everybody hits the wall eventually. And as long as you're happy with what you're doing, then, you should be okay. But yeah, I guess, well, yeah, somewhat satisfied. I mean, that seems to be, to me, that seems to be about normal. From the two different, because I actually transferred here. I was actually originally from Pennsylvania. So, I saw the pay scale difference from one to the other. But it wasn't anything drastic, and it wasn't anything that was, detrimental to the move. So, I mean, I can understand why most people are relatively happy with what it is. So, hopefully it just continues that way, and hopefully, everybody, just continues to grow.
Yes, it's definitely an industry that is among the more stable from, we don't, I think we've seen a lot of changes, though, certainly when I think back over my years in this industry. I think we've seen a lot of, change generally across all of it. But one thing that's constant is that, people need life-saving medications, people need medical devices, people, that's not a, I think the shifts we've seen are about what kinds those are, or like how automated they are, like more software stuff. We're seeing a lot more of that, but the industry as a whole is a good, secure place to be and have a career. And if you're good at what you do, I think you can do well here. And if not, those folks hopefully generally find something else to do. But it's interesting too to see how this is coming out the other side of the pandemic, because the challenges we faced as an industry to support the pandemic in general. It'll be interesting to see how that continues to evolve with emergency use authorizations starting to, I think we're looking at maybe the end of that soon. How's that going to change the landscape? And it's exciting, it's evolving. I think it's interesting. I think that keeps people engaged.
I was just going to add that the 82% satisfied with pay was something I never would have seen probably in my nonprofit days. So nice to see that in this industry. All right. Current working metrics and KPIs. So let's take a look at this core metrics and KPIs that are tracked by quality professionals. Only 13% of respondents are measuring the cost of poor quality, which is pretty low, and we'll come to the importance of this shortly. Putting a financial figure on the impact of quality and how operational challenges can alter that figure is a great way to get the attention of senior management. If you want some guidance on your KPI measurement and what metrics to track, I recommend our Quality of Culture Quality Toolkit, which you can download from our website. It includes a playbook detailing some KPIs to consider to continuously track for a central and visible cultural approach to quality. Jean-Marie and Greg, did you go implement something like this in your organizations?
I think that it's kind of done I work a lot with small companies, and I think it's done in a sort of backwards way, in that these are really implemented after the fact, usually in sort of post phase one or post a batch failure or something like that. To be honest, it's because these organizations are learning so quickly, and there's often these organizations, this is their first interaction with a quality professional, often like a consultant like myself. So these types of metrics are really, these are often organizations that are not collecting any metrics whatsoever, right? So it's really a challenge, and they're often afraid of metrics, right? So because in development, metrics don't look that great, right? So so trying to point out that these things can be quite valuable, and there's nothing wrong with them not looking that good is a difficult thing and a difficult conversation to have with senior leadership. So the hard answer is actually no. We don't often collect them in the early phase, and we should.
I think people are intimidated by expecting to then have an answer about what the numbers say, you know, like what is a good, you know, okay, we're going to measure training completed, for example, what is a good number? And I think people miss, especially in the early stage, because I work a lot with early stage companies myself, and I'm with you, Jean Marie, we really need to measure more stuff. Sometimes it's just, you have to start somewhere. Just collect the data for a while. Don't try to set a good or a bad to it. Let's just collect it and see what it is. And then we can start to make some decisions about, okay, is this something that needs to be improved, or is this is our normal run rate? And then you just watch it for a while looking for changes. But I think sometimes people think of metrics and KPIs as I automatically have to set parameters here, when we could really do a lot more if we would just start gathering. Let's worry about parameters once we've got some data to look at. Greg, have you, what is your experience there?
Yeah, so previously, like several years ago, the company that I was with, we went into lean manufacturing and using KPIs and different metrics to measure the processes as we went. But in order to be able to put them in effectively, you basically, like you were saying, Kelly, you have to have a baseline, because you don't know what your high or low is. So whether you're a manufacturing facility, whether it's, you know, how many units do we put out in a day, you know, it's great that we're putting out 1,000 of them, but our reject rate is 40%. So, you know, until you actually have some kind, but that could have just been 1 month. And then the next month you might put out 1,000 and your reject rate was 8%. So until you actually kind of have, you know, baselines for your metrics, really setting unrealistic goals for it. I mean, everybody wants to have 100% of everything, and that's just not feasible in the real world. So you really have to, like you said, just kind of let it ride, at least when you're first starting it. You know, the ones that are listed here in the slide are pretty much the standards across the board of what people would be looking for. I'm kind of surprised training's as high as it is, but you know, these are, you know, kind of what you're basically trying to wrap your head around as you're starting to figure out where to make the improvements at. And once you kind of have a baseline, then when things start to dip up or down, then you can kind of they do help to, you know, let you focus in on where your issues might be, to be able to improve your processes and your controls once you have them, you know, set. But, you know, until you have a baseline to do it with, you know, they are a little intimidating to start using.
Don't be scared of that data. Right? Great. Let's talk about quality day to day. That's my bread and butter. Quality managers are struggling to dedicate their time to value add quality improvement tasks, with a whopping 54% losing a quarter of their time to administrative tasks like entering and searching for information and producing reports. Only 13% could spend more than half their time refining processes, actioning feedback, and completing Kpis tasks to improve their levels of quality. And 10% did no quality improvement work at all. And although almost half didn't complete any quality control tasks themselves day to day, reflecting the heavy management focus of the survey, a broad four-way split between admin and quality control, assurance, and improvement across the working day can be identified for the other half. The 54% of respondents bogged down by admin aligns almost perfectly with the 55% not using an electronic quality management system, which would typically automate these activities. It's good news that about half of respondents are managing to find a general balance between the 4 task groups, but those quality professionals who can ditch admin tasks and fill the resulting time with quality improvement activity will be in a much better place in the long run. Quality improvement and insurance should never replace good quality control, but maximizing the value added rather than maintained by the quality department goes hand in hand with making your company fitter, faster, stronger, and more profitable, and increasing your internal profile at the same time. And I'll also say that's building a great foundation for a quality culture as well. So thoughts on how our folks are spending their time day to day, and where you see quality managers getting bogged down, Greg and Jean-Marie?
Well, I think that there's also another kind of hidden factor here, which is, and I think we're going to get to it, which is, proper staffing of the, quality department. So there's kind of this slide that you hit where the quality manager gets, bogged down in administrative tasks if they're not supported with, the proper administrative support. And then if, there's also onboarding of a quality management system, if that's not supported either, right, then there's also, getting bogged down in that as well. So I think there's some kind of hidden information in here is having enough, I think most quality managers would say that their department is understaffed, right? And I think they're actually right about that. You know what I mean? So Greg's nodding, right? So yeah, what do you think about that, Greg?
I would agree with that too. But one of the other parts of the culture that we have always tried to foster is that quality is not just the quality department's problem. Mm-hmm. It's everybody's. So a lot of the, some of these, things such as like maybe reporting data or, controlling NCRs or Kpis or something like that don't always necessarily have to fall on the quality group. Manufacturing can be just as responsible for tracking their own output as instead of just everything being leaned on to, just because it's a quality initiative doesn't necessarily mean it always has to be somebody in that department that handles it. One of the other things I notice is that when you look at that 25% column right there, which is pretty much the highest rated one for all of those tasks, I agree with Jean-Marie that yes, we don't have I would say most quality departments don't have enough people to handle all of that, especially if you have a really big company where that's spread out through, multiple places or multiple departments. That's hard to do. However, just as a shameless plug for Qualio here, once you have that electronic system that's in place, a lot of those administrative tasks are done for you, which is nice. So if you're just putting the data in there, producing reports is a click of a button. Looking for information is a lot easier. Tracking and trending is already done. So, I mean, a lot of those things with this, with the right system in place can alleviate a lot of those headaches rather than trying to rely on just hiring more people to be able to do it, and being able to streamline your process and not basically what we used to call paralysis by analysis, which is just really diving in and really nitpicking over a lot of things that in some, cases you really don't have to, be that involved in. So I think it's a little bit of both. It is a little bit of understaffing, and it is a little bit of, the system being either maybe overbuilt or just not being directed in the most streamlined manner to get to where you're trying to get to.
Well, and to kind of tack into a little bit of what you said there, Greg, about, it's everybody's responsibility. I think because in quality, we have a desire to have this focus on the processes from a sort of a higher level perspective, not way down in the weeds with these processes, that that sometimes QA ends up taking on, tracking and trending or KPIs, and this ties back to the metrics that we were just talking about on the last slide. If it's everybody's responsibility across a whole organization, to really look at their processes and how can we improve these things, then quality can start to take the role of advising and overseeing, not doing. Certainly an electronic system it makes that easier for everyone to do. But that way too, you start to get that engagement within other departments like operations, or like, I mean, even early stage back in design, maybe there aren't a lot of repetitive processes and things that you can stick a metric on. But if you look at processes as a whole and kind of step back and say, okay, where is this process getting bogged down, or why is this taking too long to do, or how can we,
I think we may have lost, unfortunately,
down,
the
or why is
audio
this taking too long to
from.
do, or how can we, not need to hire somebody to, you can really start.
I'm sorry, Kelly, for a moment you had frozen up and we couldn't hear you.
Am I back?
Yes, you are.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
That's okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yep, and no worries. I lost my train of thought a little bit. So if I just back up a little, I think the point I'm trying to make here is that some of these administrative tasks that quality takes on are because we're trying to get that visibility into those metrics. But if you can make systems more efficient, you can get engagement from other departments, then we can work together as a team to figure out how, because the administrative tasks like populating spreadsheets and that kind of thing, that goes on across lots of departments. So how can we look at those processes to try to gain some efficiency?
Thanks, Kelly, and everyone. We asked Sean Wynn, a GAMP SIG expert based in the UK, who helped the FDA write 21 CFR Part 11, and he has also edited several ISPE GAMP 5 guides. We asked for his thoughts on the importance of freeing up admin and quality control time to maximize quality improvement time, and this is what he had to say. That regulators are realizing that there has been historically too much focus on compliance and manual quality control activities. Although this is important and essential, the real focus should be on quality improvement. Jean-Marie, Greg, Kelly, thoughts on how we can spend more time devoted to quality improvement over quality control?
I think the only way you can actually go to and make improvements is by basically, like, what we were talking about on the earlier slides, is having your KPIs and your metrics and knowing where your bottlenecks or your flaws are. Until you figure out where your issues are, you can't improve it because you don't know what you're improving. I mean, unless it's something glaring. But a lot of it is just small little, small little quirks in the system sometimes that you just kind of gloss over because it's just either well, that's the way we've always done it mentality, or it could be, we're moving on to, or when you're adopting something new, you're moving on to a new process, or, you're just in unfamiliar waters is where, a lot of the times you start to get bogged down into things. But until you can actually narrow in on, knowing what you want your system to do and how you want to get from point A to point B, once you figure out that, then you can use your metrics or your KPIs or just, general observations to figure out where, your issues are coming up.
Yeah, alongside that, I think having a realistic quality plan for systems. So just what Greg was saying, and just kind of reiterating a little bit. So from deep on the manufacturing side, like being realistic on what you can do from, when incidents happen, to from a systems perspective, having a really realistic quality plan and revisiting it really often to focus on quality improvement, because everyone knows you start out with a quality plan and then things happen and, you know, time flies. So, you know, just making sure that you're pursuing that is really a good idea to focus on quality improvement. So just having a really realistic quality plan, as opposed to being more looking backwards and reactive. So looking backwards at your KPIs and making that part of your quality plan, but I think having more focus on that as opposed to focusing on quality policy, right?
And adding complexity to your quality policy when the reality is that's just going to make it worse.
Right. So often a quality policy has just like, you know, a reiteration of all the regulations and things like that. Like, oh, we're going to comply with all the regulations, so that's great. You've now reiterated all the regulations, but, you know, affecting all those things is really your plan. And, you know, once again, most companies we're talking about are startups, and that is a huge challenge, right? So, and even startups or even companies that are 10 years old, right? That's still a challenge to meet each and every regulation to the T. So having a plan and revising that plan constantly based on, as Greg said, you know, your KPIs and your data that you've collected.
And I think one of the other things that people run into too is that they don't build enough flexibility into their system. So when you have to make a pivot to do something, now you've boxed yourself in. You've either, like I said, paralysis by analysis. You've either SOP'd yourself into a corner that you can't get out of, or you've over-validated to a point where now, and if I think, I can't imagine in the life sciences field, there isn't any company out there now who didn't get sideswiped when the pandemic hit and all the supply chain issues hit. And you couldn't get the one, you know, component that you've always used, and now you've got to, you know, how do you make a change quick to be able to switch and use an alternative, you know, in order to keep things moving. So I think a lot of people are starting to take a look at it and say, well, you know, we do have to stay within the regulations, obviously, but maybe we can't make this as rigid as we would like, because if we have to make a pivot, then we need to have the flexibility to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So thinking about all that admin heavy approach, how does that impact quality? Here's what our respondents had to say when we asked what they would change in their role. And here's what the most common answers were.
I think balancing quality and productivity that certainly jumps out. So for me, you know, there's this blue sky world where, you know, every tiny little detail is documented, and then there's reality where, you know, we really do need to take a look at things through that risk filter and use some critical thinking elements, and you know, is every single thing that could go wrong really actually a risk to a patient or to our business? And if not, then why are we throwing the kitchen sink at every single problem? And I think that I think supply chain issues, as Greg brought up, I think, you know, some of those things have forced us as an industry to take a better look at that, and hopefully start to recognize that we can take some risks, we can make some changes and consider doing things a little bit differently. And I think the regulators are okay with that. I think we're seeing some trends in guidance documents, for example, where they're saying, look, you know, no, not every, you know, problem requires, you know, a 10-person Kpis team. Let's really think about this, because you're just spinning your wheels, you're bogging things down, you're making it harder to get business done. There's an interesting comment that came through. Someone says, agreeing with Greg, I find usually production people pass quality issues on to the QA department and then a blockage occurs, we've made all GMP quality aspects responsible to the production team and enlarge the team and allow QA to focus on Kappa audit and really look at processes more independently. Qualio has already helped in allowing QA to move away from the desk and onto the ground. We're auditing and talking to people. The facility and processes are still run by people. Yeah, if we're not spending all our time chasing paper around the building, now we can actually start to get involved in those processes. So I thought that was a good comment worthy of sharing.
Thanks. Let's talk a little bit more about some of those frustrations. So here were some more, getting more resources. That seems timely, with us discussing the Great Resignation, getting more of a headcount, and making the role more varied. I think a lot of times quality can turn into silos or become siloed itself. So keeping that variety, keeping it connected with all the other departments, I think is super helpful to keeping folks engaged. And so let's talk about senior management support and access to resources. Life science business leaders seem to be more broadly aware of the significance of quality on the corporate agenda and are helping to meet the requirements of NXSL Clause 5 by communicating the importance of quality internally. 2/3 of our respondents reported directly to a managing director, CEO, or quality director, which is a good indication of the perceived significance of quality. Anything to share there, team? And
Well,
then
I
I guess, go ahead.
I think with combined with the next slide, I think it's kind of an interesting,
Sure.
yeah.
So talking the talk and walking the walk. But this sentiment and communication isn't backed up by sufficient support for quality teams. Quality professionals appear to be facing a circular problem here. Not enough resources and support to unlock the full potential of their teams, which contributes to senior managers perhaps misunderstanding the function or value of sustained quality investment.
So there seems to be sort of this, I'm talking more about the smaller company in early stage, and they, often the senior leadership comes from R&D, so they're learning a lot about, regulation and that this is a regulated industry, and that, the value that you're putting in is really huge from a quality perspective, but this is often quality is a huge afterthought. And I think this is what's being reflected here in terms of, because this is, I'm not sure if you collected the size of the overall size of companies, but I think what's being shown here is, the leadership and the type of leadership that you have ongoing, and what the senior leadership isn't seeing is the unseen value, the actual monetary value that quality actually brings in. And that's the hard part to kind of communicate, right? And so, and it's value to shareholders, it's value to the product, and trying to communicate that value to the product upwards is a real challenge to the quality professional. And that's, I think, what we're seeing here.
And I
I
think
definitely would agree with that one. Go ahead, Greg.
so from what I've seen it through, I've worked in one large company and one smaller one, and I think sometimes the focus to the quality area from the senior leadership kind of comes through attrition. Like once they have an issue with something, then it starts to steer it a little bit more into focus. Or once you start getting your accreditations and now you're being audited by regulatory bodies and they're coming in and they're kind of, they're giving you, their advice or their, or if you're getting, audit findings and stuff like that, some of the things that might have been glossed over, kind of all of a sudden take, center stage, because now it wasn't just, your quality people telling you it, it was somebody from outside. It was a regulatory body that was pointing it out to you. So I think some of it comes from that. And then some of it also just comes from especially in the, well, we'll say life sciences, but from where I came from, it was either transplantables, or it was something that was going to be used in the manufacture of something that was going to go directly to a patient. When you're working with those kind of materials, having a quality system, a strong quality system in place is almost kind of understood because of the materials and the business that you're in. But the regulations, they change. And sometimes after a while, once you're doing something, it kind of just becomes, you just get into the routine. And sometimes, some of those quality things kind of take a little bit of a back seat when you're starting to expand and stuff like that. But I think overall, like those average numbers there, that seems like what they would think. But, it's still a matter of just, being in this, just like I said, being in the industry and knowing where these things are going, and just being able to, keep steering it towards, meeting those goals in the end.
And making, I think the other thing that would be a good sea change in the industry is to make quality, part of the leadership, right? Because in the interim here, you've got quality at best as a director level, and really bringing, quality in at, the VP, so that there's, a bigger seat at the table, right? You still would have to have operational quality, but, it's very hard to have a strong voice if you don't have a seat at the table for senior leadership.
Most of the ones that I've seen are usually lumped in. It's usually QA/compliance.
Yeah.
So usually VP of both. And, the two of them they're two separate entities.
Yes.
Even though they both have the same focus, compliance is looking at one thing, while quality is they're more of the boots on the ground. Whereas compliance, as Kelly had mentioned before, is a little bit more of that higher 360 view of everything, whereas quality can kind of, get down into, like you said, into the weeds and really get into the hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
All great points. So increasing the profile of quality, it's crucial that quality professionals learn to articulate that full potential of quality department internally if they're to achieve that potential. Low potential realization and problems stem from top management failing to understand the underlying potential that exists, rather than not trusting quality to do more. There's a clear correlation between the maturity and effectiveness of a QMS and investment in the tools and systems the quality department uses, as this question shows. There may be some encouraging signs of recognition in the importance of investment from budget holders, with 43% of those not already using an EQMS highly likely or certain to implement one this year. Most respondents felt that the technology is now significant or for the modern quality role. What else can quality professionals do to secure support, tools, resources, and investment?
So one thing that I've noticed, and this is a little off of your question, but is that, EQMS systems like Qualio have really become so affordable, right? And this goes to going to senior leadership and being able to say, this is, we can do state of the art and, have an excellent system for something that is actually, really not going to put a huge dent in your budget. And we can, and also be technologically, right up there with the large pharma. And so, and also I do believe that senior leadership is interested in putting in systems as long as they're not super expensive. And so it's definitely, you know, if you're walking in and saying, I want to put in an EQMS system and you know, want to, you know, be state of the art, that's actually a really good argument, as long as you don't want to spend way too much money, right? And so this is where systems like Qualio kind of meet this kind of goal, and is that you're actually showing that you're ahead of the game and that you're going to be within budget. So I do feel that this is where you know, the using an AWS system and, you know, not having to build in like a big SAP complex system that's, you know, way overkill for the modern virtual company, it really, really helps this increasing the profile of quality. So
Yeah. And I think going back to our earlier topic of data and metrics, I think bringing that to the boardroom and having those metrics and data to show and support your cost of quality and what the cost of poor quality looks like, I think is helpful to make that boardroom message really come across to senior management. Greg or Kelly, any more thoughts before we get ready to answer some questions here?
I think the only other thing would be that if, like, to tack on to what Jean Marie said about staying within budget, I think the fact that you can, at least what I've seen from what I've been using it for so far since I've been doing it, is that you can basically customize this to do almost anything you want, even though it's like right out of the box, without having to pay for, you know, I mean, some of them, I'm sure there are systems out there that you can spend $1 million on that have 1 million modules in it that'll do everything, but you got to pay for all of it. Whereas, like I said, when we came across this and we saw all the things that were in there, and we started to have the initial discussions, and they were like, oh no, that's just right out of the box. You don't have to get a module for Kappa or a module to do this, or, and we were like, and we can make this do whatever we want. And they're like, yeah, basically you can set it up, you know, you can customize it to your own documents. So, you know, for us, that was a no-brainer. And it was way easier to be able to, you know, get that through the budgetary process. When we said we could do whatever we want with it, you know, that made a big difference.
Yep. I'll hold that thought for a little bit later.
Oh, did you want to share something, Kelly?
No, I was just looking through some of the questions.
Sure.
Let's see. Do you have a few findings from FDA, MHRA, or EMA around the QMS? I did not do a lot of research in this space prior to this. So as far as, you know, obviously the goal for today was really to speak from the point of view of the respondents to our survey. And so we didn't go deeply into findings, but I do think probably any of us on here, I don't know, Jean Marie or Greg, if you've got some experience with previous findings during audits that are related to electronic quality systems versus paper.
In my experience, I've had way more issues with paper than I did with the electronic. In my previous company, when we first started, everything was on paper before we went to our first EMS or EQMS. And we did have, there's just so much more room for error than there is when it's all being controlled, you know, in an electronic system where all of your signatures and approvals, and it's all timed and date stamped, and there's just way less problems with it than it is trying to manage it through paper, at least in my experience. And I've been in FDA regulation and ISO 13485 for 20 years. So I've been through all of it. And that was by far, the electronic is far better.
absolutely.
It alone.
Definitely.
All right. I have another question here. For a startup which designs products for life sciences, what would be the best metric to start tracking so we can create that baseline?
I think that you know, really trying to make sure that your company is compliant with training, to make sure that the other thing is to keep an eye on your general manufacturing success. Is, you know, anything that happens while, you know, during manufacturing and testing is a really, because you think something's a one-off and it never is something to really keep an eye on. So anytime you think that something just accidentally happened, I would track that in general. Because that's kind of the trending that I would look at over and above the typical kind of stability and things like that. But it's really kind of things that come up in manufacturing, even if they're not essentially out of specification, out of trend, or anything like that, but unusual activities, make a note from a quality perspective. And that's where you work really closely with your technical people to note those things.
Definitely. I think the metrics that we put up there are a good place to start from a broad sweep perspective, things like training, number of non-conformances, that kind of stuff. It's a great place to start. And then I think from there, it's really what's needed by your business. You know, we talked a little bit earlier about where are you seeing bottlenecks? Where are you seeing processes that don't flow? Those are the kinds of places where you want to look at tracking some information and then starting to look at what is that information telling us. And yeah, this can be done all the way back in design. You know, how often are we missing, you know, the right risk assessments, or how often are we missing the right, goodness, sorry, that just left my brain. But anyway, it can be tracked clear back there, and that baseline data becomes more and more important the longer you exist as a company, the further you go. As Jean Marie just said, you know, if you something that's like, oh, this just happened one time and we'll never see it again, you don't write that down. I spent a lot of time as a quality engineer supporting commercial manufacturing, and seeing issues would pop up and somebody would say in passing, oh yeah, we saw that back in development. Oh really? What'd you do about it? Did you, you know, and if they didn't document it, then we had to redo that investigation all over again, redo that whole troubleshooting. If they just documented it, even though it was in research, that could have saved us a lot of time and effort in commercial.
A good practice is to do a closeout activity. So to sort of, or a sunset activity, to look backwards and to get the group together even for a 1 hour meeting and do some Post-it notes and look up and say, okay, let's review what happened, what went on, and what do we want to track. So get the team together and look at that, and you know, internally. Nobody wants to do it, but you should.
Summary. Do we have time for one more question, Ryan?
Go for it.
Okay. How can life science professionals eliminate some of these frustrations around getting the investment and support of senior management? Seems like a good one to sneak in here at the end.
Data, numbers. And it all can be tied to dollars, even if it's incredibly indirect. You know, how much does your time cost to redo whatever the process is, or gather that piece of paper, or, you know, spend a week just writing down what do you do from 1 minute to the next, and then look at that and aggregate that. Go, wow, I spent half my time chasing paper around the building, and that is costing you my salary for these number of hours, right? Like, these things can all be tied up to dollars.
Yeah, and I feel also the same
ways,
from
you
the
know,
shareholder
using
perspective.
argument. It's certainly.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry, Kelly, we lost you again for a moment there at the end of your answer you just gave.
Oh, we lost Kelly.
Oh, we may have lost her entirely.
So from the perspective of, you know, the leadership as well, is most products, if in smaller companies, are going to be, you know, have third-party investment. And quality is something that is, you know, adds value to the product. So, you know, really talking about how quality adds value to the product. If you have poor quality, a third party, big pharma is going to look at that product and not value it. And so really talking to what is this value that it's adding from the due diligence perspective. And so I think that's one of the things that you can also talk to is, you know, the quality of your contractor, the quality of the, you know, validation, all of those things, you know, adding value in that manner.
I totally agree.
When
Thanks for
we
those answers.
And the way we did it was we basically did a little bit of what Jean Marie and what Kelly said. And it was just they want numbers, they want data, they want dollars. So we would just, you know, we would even break it down to the point of the raw materials that it took to make it. So if we either do have to rework it or if we do have scrap, how much is that scrap costing us to redo something? And then we would actually take it one step further and say, okay, if I do have to rework something or if I have to do it again, what's the cost of the time that it's going to take me not only to redo it, but what am I losing by not using that time to produce something else? So you're basically double losing. A, you have to redo something that's going to cost you X amount of dollars because you had to redo it. And B, you're losing out because now I could have made this other product that now I can't make that's not going to be available. What's that going to cost me? So, I mean, all of those things to be able to, you know, if you have something like that in your arsenal to say, well, look, it's only going to take one mistake and this is what it's going to cost you. Whereas if we had, you know, a system in place that may be able to help us narrow down the possibilities. And as we all know, 13485 and the FDA are very risk-based. So if you have something to help you be able to identify those risks and eliminate them, or at least reduce them drastically at your fingertips, rather than relying on running around like we're saying, chasing paper, that's, you know, that's a big factor that goes into it as well.
Thanks, Greg. Back to you, Ryan.
All right, well, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation and excellent Q&A session. We have reached the end of our webinar time here today. If we couldn't attend to your questions, though, the team at Qualio may follow up with you, or if you have further questions, you can direct them to the email addresses that are up on the screen. I want to thank everyone for participating in today's webinar. You will be receiving a follow-up email from Xtalks with access to the recorded archive for this event. A survey window will be popping up on your screen as you exit, and your participation is appreciated as it will help us to improve our webinars. I've also sent you a link in the chat box, and with this link, you'll be able to view the recording of this event on this page, and you can also share this link with your colleagues when they register for the recording here as well. So I encourage you to do that. Now, please join me once more in thanking our speakers for their wonderful time here today. We hope you all found the webinar informative. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks for coming.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.